Hello and welcome to Odds on Bundesliga. Guten Morgen. Welcome back to our Bundesliga show. We, of course, have Ronan Murphy with us to analyze this new Bundesliga season, I guess, with three main questions. First one, is Leverkusen going to keep the pace of last season and be unbeatable again? Second one, Vincent Kompany is the new Bayern Munich manager. No one wanted the job. Is he gonna be all right? And third one, Nuri Sahin to Borussia Dortmund. It sounds a bit weird after Terzic got to the Champions League final. Ronan, I guess these are the three main questions.
They are the big talking points this season, I suppose. Obviously, like you said, Edu, number one, can Leverkusen remain unbeaten? And I was at the Super Cup in Leverkusen on Saturday evening, and looking at how they came back from playing with 10 men, being a goal down with 10 minutes to go. They looked calm, they looked ready, they looked prepared, they looked confident that they would get the equaliser, which they did 3 minutes from time, and then went to penalties, won the Super Cup. So I think that deal with God, or the deal with the devil, or whatever deal Leverkusen and Real Madrid, of course, we're well used to saying, it seems to have continued. It hasn't expired yet, so they'll definitely look unbeatable so far this season. But this is going to be a different Bayern Munich beast, and that moves on to question two. Vincent Kompany, will he be a success? It's hard to know at this stage, because we haven't really seen him manage at this level. We've obviously seen him do well in the Championship, do poorly in the Premier League. So is the Bundesliga the right step for him? Is he big enough to manage at Bayern Munich, or is he someone that Bayern Munich have appointed because maybe the board members think that he can be someone that they can tell him what to do, rather than having a controversial figure or an outspoken figure like Thomas Tuchel? So it just remains to be seen how Bayern will do, but obviously they've spent a lot of money, so they should be a lot better than last season, regardless of who the manager is. And the manager at Borussia Dortmund is a surprise for many, but anyone who watched the show last season will remember that Nuri Sahin, when he came in, Borussia Dortmund's fortunes kind of turned around, and it was him as much as 𝐜𝐴𝐴𝐻𝐿. Terzic, obviously a hugely popular figure at the club, but Sahin came in, and then they turned into a much more convincing team, a much more consistent team, and that's helped them get to the Champions League final. So I think he could end up being maybe the mastermind behind it all. Like we saw Hansi Flick maybe was the mastermind behind 𝐜𝐭𝐤 𝐿ove back when Germany won the World Cup. So maybe Nuri Sahin is the new mastermind of Borussia Dortmund, and they could lodge their own sort of title challenge, especially with the signings they've made.
Well, I'm talking about titles. The last question is Harry Kane going to win a title finally this 2025, this season? Well, let's see, many questions. Of course, press the like, subscribe to our channel. We have already many comments. Feel free to ask any question to Ronan. And now let's go on with the show. And of course, a new and beautiful layout. We've been working this summer for this Bundesliga show. Well, Bundesliga is going to be unveiled on Friday. First game, Gladbach Leverkusen. Gladbach had a very poor season last one, so Seoane on the bench is going to try to get better and to target the European football for next season. The first game, of course, is going to be tough against Leverkusen, but it's also going to be tough for Xabi Alonso's men. It's never easy to travel to Gladbach. I guess, Ronan, the best thing for Leverkusen this season is keeping the manager and keeping the same players, basically.
Yeah, it is. Borussia Mönchengladbach have done that to a similar extent, but obviously they're not the same sort of level of team as Bayer Leverkusen. Xabi Alonso staying at the club is such a huge coup for Bayer Leverkusen, because he has been linked with Bayern Munich, he'd be linked with Liverpool, he was even linked with Real Madrid when there was talk that Ancelotti maybe moving from the club there. So it's was a masterstroke to be able to keep him around, and they haven't lost any real key names. All their star players are still there. Stanisic is probably the biggest one to leave, and that's not going to be a huge kind of exit for them. So I think this will be a Leverkusen team determined to repeat on the success of last season. They've made a few kind of clever enough signings. They've strengthened kind of one player in each position, with Martin Terrier obviously not having the best debut in the Super Cup, getting sent off in that one, but I think that will be something that he can live and learn from. So this Leverkusen team, I think they'll pick up where they left off last season. They look to be as sharp as ever. Victor Boniface scored in that Super Cup before being taken off when Leverkusen went down to 10 men, and I think he could be a key factor as long as he stays fit. He obviously doesn't have the same international duties this season, so I think he will be a huge figure in Leverkusen, kind of threatening Bayern Munich again at the top of the table. And he looked kind of intense. He looked up for it. He, after the match and during the match even, he got booked from the bench because I think he wasn't happy about being taken off. So I think he will start obviously this match, and he could be a good option for a goal scorer bet if you fancy that. He's 2.25 to score. If as the first scorer he's 5.5. I think there could be good options because he is a man, when he's determined, he knows exactly how to find the net. So this will be a good start to the season, especially after he scored in the Super Cup. He'll be determined to score again in the league and maybe stop Harry Kane from winning that individual trophy and win the goal scorer, the goal scorer canon for himself. So this one as well, in the last season we've seen Leverkusen kind of dominate. Leverkusen won 3-0 away last season, almost exactly a year ago. It was on the 26th of August last season, so it's more or less the same time. So a year on, you wouldn't be surprised to see that kind of a high scoring win for Leverkusen as well. But what we've seen from the Super Cup is Leverkusen can be exposed at the back. We've seen it in the past too because of the attacking football they play. So both teams to score, yes, could be a good option. 1.61. I think I like to look at that. The most common result in Gladbach is 2-2. So this could be a high scoring game throughout. I like the looks of the goals market. Total goals in the second half over 1.75 looks good for me at 1.98. But overall, the tip for this one, I'm going for total goals over 3.25.
Ronan, we were seeing the Bundesliga outright odds. Our Ukrainian friend Andriy just made a couple of interesting questions. First one is, who is your favorite to win the trophy this season?
It's the same as every year, unfortunately. It's Bayern Munich. I think because they've spent so much money, Michael Olise, 𝐬𝐭𝐴 has kind of fixed problems at the club, and maybe Company will be a less divisive figure than Tuchel was. I think he might get on a bit better with the players maybe than Tuchel did. He's not as good as a tactical manager, obviously, but I think Bayern Munich are the type of team that maybe they don't need as much tactics as other teams. Maybe when you just let them go out and play, their talent will shine through, and I think they probably will win the league again this season because it's going to be a long season for Bayer Leverkusen. Like I said, they brought in 3 new players, but they didn't kind of bring in a load of new players, and they do have 8 Champions League games at least this season. So that's going to be tricky to balance all those competitions, because if you remember back to the Europa League final, they looked very tired against Atalanta, and they'll need to kind of keep fit and keep their key players fit and together and not injured to have any chance.
And the second question is which teams we should keep an eye on for betting, kind of the dark horse of this season, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think people are still underestimating Stuttgart a little, probably because they lost some key players, but I think the manager has been incredible there. They've obviously been able to keep Sepp Hoeneß as well, but they've signed cleverly. They've brought Dennis Undav back, and I think they can still continue to be the Stuttgart that we saw last season rather than the Stuttgart that we saw 2 seasons ago. So I think they can kind of continue to be a kind of a contender at the top of the table, and I think the odds aren't really reflecting that yet anyway, because they're not among the favourites. The usual kind of favourites are the Bayerns, the Dortmunds, the Leipzigs and the Leverkusens, but I think Stuttgart have been slept on a little so far.
Well, let's say, for instance, Heidenheim was a huge surprise also last season. Let's move on. By the way, we have a couple of tips for a draw in this Gladbach Leverkusen, which would be a surprise. Let's move on to the games we have on Saturday. First one is Augsburg Werder Bremen. Augsburg made a good season. Last one, they didn't suffer. Really compact, really good, I would say. Werder Bremen, also mid-table team. This could be a potential draw, for instance.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring affair anyway. I wouldn't rule out a draw either, because these teams, they're not kind of huge scorers. They never were, and Bremen, even their lack of goals was the reason that they didn't qualify for Europe last season. They missed out on the European positions by 1 goal, so they definitely need to score more goals this season. They're both kind of are teams that look to be mid-table teams again this season, but I think Augsburg could be disappointed by maybe some of the performance they've put in friendlies. Obviously, you can't read too much into friendlies, but they've had some disappointing defeats, including 3-1 loss to Marseille, but they also lost 2-1 to a South African side, TS Galaxy. So it's not the best way to go into the season. They bounced back a little in the cup against Victoria Berlin, and I think for Bremen, we saw some excitement in their cup win over Cottbus. 𝐿𝐭𝐞𝐿 scored a hat-trick, and he's a new signing from Schalke. He's come back to Bremen. He was in the academy there. He has a great record at underage level for Germany. I think he has 3 in 320 games since he's made that step up. He only scored 5 times for Schalke last season, but I think he could be a good one. I like, if you like watching wonder kids or young players, you're looking for the next big thing, he could be one to keep an eye on this season, because for the Bremen, like I said, they need to find goals from somewhere, and maybe he will be someone to look at. Their own friendlies were inconsistent. They lost and beat Coventry, and they drew and lost to Rennes in double header games, the way the kind of teams set up for the season with 2 games in the same day, to kind of have a look at the depth of the squad. So I think they need to find consistency in the squad and figure out what their best 11 is. But Augsburg, I don't think they're going to do too much this season. Perhaps they overachieved a little bit last season with their league placing in 11th, but this one, it doesn't. You like to look for a draw, but there's actually been no draws between the sides in the past 7 years. Bremen won both games last season 2-0, 3-0 away, and 2-0 at home. So I like to look of a Bremen win to 0, that's 6. Bremen to win, as you see on the screen, is 3.25, which isn't bad either, because I don't think Augsburg are going to do too much here. Total goals under 2.5 is another option at 1.97. But like you said, it could be a draw. And I think it could be a Bremen win. So that's why my tip here is going for Bremen Asian handicap plus a quarter.
Well, it's very curious that we haven't seen a draw in this game in the past year. Andrios is asking about La Liga show. It will be uploaded to the channel later in the day. Andrios is already been recorded with Álvaro. Let's move on to the next one. More interesting, in my opinion, Mainz Union Berlin, because both teams struggled last season, but Mainz had a phenomenal end of the season. No defeats in the last 9 games. The last defeat was the 9th of March in Munich, and Union Berlin, we know that they struggled a lot after playing Champions League, and they almost got relegated. Svensson is the manager. What do you expect about these 2 teams?
Yeah, I think Mainz are a team, like the question earlier, which teams maybe are underappreciated. Mainz are definitely one of those teams that are underappreciated, because, like you said, finished the season with 9 games unbeaten, and they, with the cup win at the weekend, they've added 10 games unbeaten to their competitive run. So they're doing very well. And if you look at the table just for the second half of last season, the Rückrunde table, as they call it in Germany, Mainz would have been 7th in the table, rather than down in 13th, where they ended up finishing up. So this is a very different team to this time last year. So this is a team that should be able to pull off results against the likes of Union Berlin, who we've seen have not been the best. They finished last season in 15th. They only stayed up thanks to a win on the final day of the season that kept them out of the relegation playoff on goal difference. So Union Berlin, I don't think they've really changed much to the side. They haven't been able to get goals, and they haven't really looked to invest much up front. They've brought in a kind of a player who's played in the lower divisions, but when you step up to the Bundesliga, it's always hard to see how that will turn in, whether it'll actually work for a team like Union Berlin. And their preseason results as well have been very poor. I thought they conceded 4 goals in 2 different games. They drew 4 all with Rangers, and then they lost 4-0 to Lyon as well. So this is a team that isn't great up front and not great at the back either. So I'd be surprised if they do a lot this season. Whereas Mainz, they should continue the form that they had last season. Mainz win on the screen, you'll see 2.05 looks very good for this one. Mainz to win to 0. If you want to go even further, it's 3.25. But overall, I don't think Union Berlin are going to score too many goals this season because they scored the fewest goals of the non-relegated teams. So the teams that weren't relegated last season, they scored the fewest goals with 33 goals in 34 games. So they don't even score a goal a game. And I don't think they're going to do much better this season. So that's why my tip for this one, Mainz clean sheet.
Okay, you see Union Berlin struggling this season. Next game, RB Leipzig playing against Bochum. Bochum, I thought they were relegated, to be honest, after losing 3-0 at home in the playoff against Düsseldorf, but they had a miracle and they were able to beat Düsseldorf 3-0 and stay in the Bundesliga. RB Leipzig lost Dani Olmo in the summer. What do you expect about Marco Rose's team this season?
Yeah, I think they may have lost Dani Olmo, but I think they signed well. They obviously brought back Xavi Simons, which is a huge asset to RB Leipzig, because we saw how good he was last season. We saw how good he was at the Euros, and he seemed to be a player in demand, and it was great for Leipzig to get him back. Obviously, they have no purchase option or purchase obligation, even either of them in the loan deal, so it's just a straight loan. But he can be such a huge player for them. I think he can make a big difference. And the other signings that they've brought in look good as well. Martin van der Voort in goal, 𝐜𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐷𝐿 in midfield, and Dani Olmo is obviously gone. But I like the look of the new signing, Antonio Nusa, 21 million from Bruges, and he scored in the cup win at the weekend, and an easy 4-win over Red White Essen, and Sesko, Openda and Simons, to kind of star attackers from last season. They were all on the score sheet too. So it seems like this team has mostly stayed together. The loss of Olmo will be a big one, but I think they will have enough to kind of cover it, because they have a great squad, a great deep squad, which Leipzig always do. They like to sign these young players and give them plenty of opportunities and then make a lot of money from them. And I think the players they brought in, they will be able to do that too. So Leipzig, they should definitely comfortably win this one, because Bochum, like you said, they only stayed up through the relegation playoff. They did amazing to come back in that relegation playoff and get the second leg 3-0 and then go through on penalties. But it shows a lot of character, but that's a lot of character against Fortuna Düsseldorf rather than RB Leipzig. It's a different kind of beast when you're playing RB Leipzig. Or Leipzig have their own competitive unbeaten run, even better than Mainz's. It's 13 games undefeated, which stretches back to March. So they're a very hard team to beat. They're a very hard team for Bochum to beat. Leipzig won 4-1 in Bochum away last season. It was a draw at home. So Bochum only have one win in the past 7 years against Leipzig. So I don't think it's going to happen. The second one isn't going to really happen here, but it could be a high scoring game for Leipzig, especially with the way that their forwards have started the season in the cup. They've all shown that they can get on the score sheet already. So total goals over 3.5 is an option here for 2. Leipzig, the first team to score, and Leipzig to win are kind of more or less around the same, 1.28 to first team score. And as you see there, it's to win is 1.29, but Leipzig to win both halves then as well as 2.5. I like to look up all these, but as my tip on the screen shows, half-time, full-time, Leipzig.
Exciting Leipzig, Xavi Simons, Openda, Sesko, very interesting, even if they've lost Dani Olmo. Also, the Spaniard was injured a lot of weeks last season. Let's see how he performs at Barcelona. Next game is an interesting one, Freiburg, Stuttgart. Freiburg won't play in Europe this season, as they are used to, because they finished mid-table last season, and Stuttgart, very exciting season ahead, losing the Bundesliga Super Cup and finishing second last year. So they are going to play Champions League football after so many years. You've already said that you don't expect them to struggle. We had the experience of Union Berlin last season playing Champions League and almost being relegated. You don't expect the same for Stuttgart?
No, I don't. I think Union Berlin, one of the big problems with them is they overachieved in that season, and then they signed terribly. They brought in some kind of football manager looking signings,
Bonucci.
ex-Italy kind of stars that everybody knew were past it. But Union Berlin thought this is their chance now to get these players to come into the club, and it was a disaster. And the season as a whole was a disaster. I think Union Berlin fans would have even admitted themselves that season where they did finish in the top four that was too much for them. They aren't a team that is capable of being a top four team to play in the Champions League kind of on a regular basis. They should be kind of looking to play mid-table, and even when they got promoted to the Bundesliga a few years ago, they even thought that was too soon. They had the kind of experience that the club was scheisse, we're going up. So I'm not going to translate that one, but I think it's obvious enough what it is if you have any grasp of German. But yeah, that was Union Berlin kind of they reached for the stars a bit too quickly, whereas Stuttgart, they have a history of being a top team in Germany. They are one of Germany's big clubs. Traditionally, they've won the league in the last couple of decades. Before that Bayern Munich masterclass of 10 in a row, whatever. So they were a team that were at the top table long before any of this, and they're now back at it, and I think they can stay there. They've obviously shown in the Super Cup that they are a match for Bayer Leverkusen, that they could go toe-to-toe with them. Leverkusen's deal with the devil obviously paid off at the end, but Stuttgart looked good in that game, and some of the new signings looked impressive as well. Demirovic will be a big kind of add for them. Hopefully he can provide some of the goals that 𝐸𝐴𝐴𝐴 got last season. Obviously 𝐸𝐴𝐴𝐴 was incredible and it's impossible to replace him, but I think they will have a nice striking duo on Undav and Demirovic this season, and that will help them. I like the look of some of their younger signings. Jamie Leveling from Union Berlin. Justin Deal has also come in from Cologne, and then they got Franz Kratzig on loan from Bayern Munich. He missed a penalty in the shootout, but I was talking to someone from Stuttgart at the club, Christian Gentner, the former player, and he said he has no concerns that this will affect him. He's a kind of enthusiastic young guy, and I think he will be one to watch this season because he can be kind of he might be the future for Germany in a few years. So Stuttgart, they've signed well, they've kept some key players. They've obviously lost a couple of key players, but I think their turnover looks fine. They even are in the market for another couple of players before the end of the window closes. So they know that they need a deeper squad to compete in the Champions League. But Freiburg, on the other hand, they haven't done too much, and in the cup they relied on Junior Adamu to score 2 of their goals, and he only scored once all season last season, and that was in the Europa League against a team from Serbia back at Pala. So it's not they will also, like we've seen in the past, they might end up struggling for goals because Freiburg aren't a team that generally win matches big or score a lot of goals, and they could end up being the same. They're kind of key man to keep an eye on. A young player to keep an eye on me is Bruno Ogbus, the right back, a right wing back. He was linked with Leeds and linked with Nottingham Forest during the summer, but he's probably going to be the replacement for Sililat, right wing back, and he could be one to keep an eye on there. But I think for this one, Stuttgart are going to build on the performance they put in against Leverkusen. They won't let their heads drop. It's only the Super Cup at the end of the day. It's not a massive trophy, so they should look to bounce back and win this one. They won this game 3-1 last season, 5-0 at home. So recent results are definitely on their side. Stuttgart win 2.16 on the screen, looks really good. Stuttgart Asian handicap minus a quarter is 1.86. That's another good option. Stuttgart to score first, 1.8. I like to look at it as well, but I think Dennis Undav is going to be such a huge player for them. He's my bet for this one. Dennis Undav to score anytime, 2.88.
He scored in the Super Cup, and we have Igor back in Stuttgart as well, over 2.5 goals, and Stuttgart scoring 1.5 goals in this game, over. And also Intrepid Judge is back in Stuttgart. So it looks like everyone likes Stuttgart this season. Let's move on to the next game. Hoffenheim, Holstein Kiel. Big surprise having Kiel in the Bundesliga. No experience in the top flight. What can we expect from them? Are they going to be like Darmstadt last season, or are they going to be like Heidenheim last season?
I'd say from the teams that came up, Pauli probably have the most chance of being like Heidenheim, and Kiel probably more likely to be like Darmstadt. But obviously, it's hard to predict when these teams come up how they will play. Will they try and continue the attacking football or whatever that got them to this level, or will they retreat and kind of roll over? So playing against Hoffenheim in the first game probably isn't the worst start to a season for Kiel, but in pre-season, I'm not sure what we've discovered from watching them. They lost their last 2 pre-season games to AB and Gladbach. I'm not sure what the manager would have learned heading into the Bundesliga, or would he have learned much at all. But they've brought in a couple of players in midfield with Scandinavian influence, I think could help. Magnus Knudsen from Norway, and former Sweden international 𝐜𝐴𝐴𝐷, who's now a Bosnian international. So he switched nationalities after playing senior level for Sweden. But both of those should add some sort of kind of metal into midfield, and I think that's what you need when you're playing at this level. But playing away to Hoffenheim, it's going to be a tricky encounter, and I think it could be a long season for Kiel. They've never played at this level. Like you said, they're the latest team to play in the Bundesliga. They've never played in the Bundesliga before. So obviously we don't have much of a recent history between these teams, because Hoffenheim are always in the Bundesliga. They're always a top tier side. So the only recent meeting between the two of them is in 2021 when Hoffenheim won 5-1. I don't think it's going to be like that this time, obviously, because Hoffenheim themselves, they haven't been a team that last season or recently that score a lot of goals. Total goals under 3 looks a good option here, 1.98. I think Kiel might. Yeah, go on.
No, go on.
Yeah, I think Kiel could keep it close. Obviously, the Kiel Asian handicap +1 is 1.82. A draw is 4.60. If you think that Kiel can get something in their first ever Bundesliga game, I don't think this is going to be a high scoring one. There was a clean sheet in 5-9 matches on match day 1 last season, and there were 2 1-0 wins. So I think correct score 1-0 for Hoffenheim could be an interesting one here. That's 10. But as I don't think either team are going to score a lot of goals, and I don't think Kiel will score any goals, I'm going to go for Hoffenheim clean sheet as my tip.
All right, let's see how they perform. Kiel, a city known by the handball team instead of the football team, but there you have now. In the Bundesliga, and on Saturday, the late kickoff is a very interesting game. Borussia Dortmund, Frankfurt, new Dortmund, as we said at the beginning, with Nuri Sahin as a manager, as you said before, with Guirassy as a big signing. 𝐜𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜𝐿 left the club in the Champions League final. We all remember Dortmund played really well at that game, especially in the first half. Frankfurt, they are going to play European football again with Top Muller as the manager. What can we expect about these two teams this season?
Yeah, I think we should expect Borussia Dortmund to have put in a better performance and aim for the top 4 this season. They're in the Champions League, but that's only because of kind of the back door of getting in after finishing 5th. But if you look at the table last season, these teams were 5th and 6th, but the points difference between them was 16 points. So it wasn't a close race for 5th or anything between these two teams. And Dortmund, I think they've signed well. Guirassy, like we've said, is a huge signing. Maxi Bayer has come in. He's obviously a huge hope for the future for Germany and now for Borussia Dortmund. Valdemar Anton has come in from Stuttgart. He was an excellent defender for Stuttgart as they came second last season, and he scored 3 minutes into his competitive debut in the cup win over Lübeck and Phoenix Lübeck at the weekend. So I think he will be a huge addition for them. And Dortmund, for a long time, we've obviously had question marks at them at the back. So maybe he can kind of stabilize things. Schlotterbeck beside him, they could be a perfect kind of partnership at the back for Dortmund, and we'll see how Nuri Sahin kind of rotates his defensive squad, because he does have the Champions League to play with as well. I like the fact that Joe Anvil scored in that cup win as well. He missed most of last season through injury, and now he's back. I think he could be another good option. Borussia Dortmund always have lots of exciting options, exciting young players. So, but one of maybe the most exciting players in this game could be 𝐬𝐭𝐿, who Frankfurt have brought back. They've signed from PSG permanently. He scored twice in their cup win over the other Eintracht Braunschweig. at the weekend. So I think he could be very good this season, and he could add to his tally from last season, because we saw the potential that he would have. 𝐿_Matanovic came off the bench in the cup game. He played 22 minutes, I think it was, and he scored. He had a 1-2 record for 𝐼𝐴𝐳𝐷𝐼 last season, so he could be another option for goals for Frankfurt. So I think this is a game that has plenty of goals in it. So last season, if you look at the two matches, it was 3-1 to Dortmund in Dortmund in this fixture, and then the game in Frankfurt was 3-3, over to 3.25 goals is my tip there, 2.01. You'll see on the screen. The most common result in Dortmund is 3-1. So both teams to score yes is another option here, obviously 1.55. Correct score 3-1 if you want to go with that from last season. The most common result as well, that's 12.25. But I think I'll just play it safe and go for total goals over 3.25 at 2.01.
Alavi is also going for both teams to score in this game. Of course, no Marco Reus anymore for Borussia Dortmund. We saw some pictures of 𝐿𝐿 Süle being really thin compared to how he was in the past, losing a bit of weight in this summer with a fitness trainer. So let's see this new Borussia Dortmund under Nuri Sahin. We don't have great thoughts about Nuri Sahin in Madrid in his spell at Real Madrid. Really short one, by the way, but let's see how he does as a manager. And for Sunday, we have two games, Wolfsburg, Bayern Munich. We have a person here, Igor, is going to be lucky enough to be at the stadium, he says, for this game, the first game for Vincent Kompany as Bundesliga manager. He already trained an official game in the Cup for Bayern Munich. You mentioned the big signings for this summer for Bayern Munich, but it's a big question mark. The manager, Vincent Kompany, was not the first on the list. We know this, and Bayern Munich had difficulties to find a manager during the summer, and it was a very disappointing season. Last one, except the Champions League. Of course, they were this close to qualify for the final. You expect a better Bayern, I guess, in the Bundesliga this season?
I do, yeah. I expect a better Bayern, and it's unlikely they will finish third again, because that is unthinkable that they wouldn't finish in the top two, never mind first. So yeah, I am expecting a better Bayern Munich. I hope Igor has a great game. He says in the comments there he's going to be in the VIP area, so very, very nice for him. I hope he
even better.
he takes full advantage of the food and drink on offer, especially if he doesn't have to put his hand in his pocket to pay for it. Yeah, there must be some benefits of the VIP area. And if you get, say, Wolfsburg, it's not known for too much touristy. It's the Autostadt, so because the Volkswagen factory, it's kind of built around that. But if he gets time to explore the city, maybe the Art and Culture Museum might be somewhere that he can pop into while he's there, if he's not too full from the food and drink and from the VIP area, of course. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this match and seeing kind of how this new Bayern Munich team will look. Obviously, they played Ulm in the Cup, but it's Ulm in the Cup and Bayern Munich. Thomas Muller scored twice, and I don't think Thomas Muller is going to be a crucial part of Bayern Munich this season. I think he will be wheeled out for these matches against Ulm and the last few minutes of games, but I'm not sure Vincent Kompany will be relying on him. Perhaps more interesting from this week is Tuesday's friendly against Grasshoppers, where Michael Olise scored his first goal for Bayern Munich. So that could be the future of Bayern Munich. He obviously, we've seen him in the Premier League, what he can do, and he is the marquee signing for Bayern Munich this season. So he might be able to take some of the weight off Harry Kane's shoulders from the goal scoring point of view, because what we saw from the Euros, Harry Kane looks a very tired player. His age may be catching up with him a little. He is the favourite, clearly, for the top scorer award in the Bundesliga, because Bayern Munich will probably end up getting so many penalties as well as anything else. But will he be able to kind of match that kind of impact he had last season and guide him to his first trophy and their first trophy in 2 years? So we'll have to see how that turns out for them. But it will be an interesting kind of season to see how Kompany adapts, and if things do go wrong, will they stick with him? Is this a kind of a project, or is he just plan E or D of after those list of managers that went through? It's going to be an interesting one, and I think it's a good match for Bayern Munich to open up with under Vincent Kompany and an away trip to Wolfsburg. The past 7 years, Wolfsburg have never beaten Bayern Munich. They've only had one draw, so kind of history is on Kompany's side. So last season, Bayern won 2-0 at home and 2-1 away. The most common result in Wolfsburg is 3-1 win for Bayern. The most common overall is 2-0 win for Bayern. So Bayern Munich to win this one kind of looks to be on the cards. Bayern Munich win 1.52 on the screen there. Away is a decent option. I like to look up to Bayern to score first and then lead a halftime, win the match. 2.25 is a good option. You don't usually see Bayern Munich get that high in a halftime, full-time kind of odds, but I suppose because it's a new era away on the first day of the season, it's 2.25. Total goals over 3.25 is 2. That could be another option there. As you see, my tip on the screen for this one overall, I'm going for Bayern Munich Asian handicap -2. That's 3.2. But I also like the look of Harry Kane first goal scorer 4. And that ties into Bayern Munich to score a penalty 4.5, because this season the Bundesliga has the chip in the ball, so we'll see maybe more handball penalties being given. So Bayern Munich are always helped by handball penalties, so there might even be a few more this season in the Bundesliga. So Harry Kane score or Bayern score a penalty look good for me, but Bayern Munich Asian handicap -2. It's hard to look past because they usually win this one comfortably.
Well, really high odds, of course, for Asian handicap -2. Armin is saying that Harry Kane to score is almost a bunker. Intrepid Judge is also going for Harry Kane to score, and Igor going for 𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜 to score his first ever Bundesliga goal. First game for Vincent Kompany in the Bundesliga, Wolfsburg, Bayern Munich. And the last game in this match day is St. Pauli, Heidenheim. St. Pauli back to the Bundesliga after so many years. After 2011 was the year where they got relegated. So I'm sure we are going to enjoy the atmosphere in Hamburg, in this crazy neighborhood of St. Pauli against Heidenheim. A big surprise last season. We didn't expect much from them, no experience in the Bundesliga, but they were great. Remember, even beating Bayern Munich in their stadium at the end of the season. You said that St. Pauli could be the new Heidenheim, so you expect good things about St. Pauli.
I do. Obviously, they have changed their manager. We saw their manager leave and go to Brighton, but they were kind of one of the most attacking and exciting teams that we've ever seen in the second division in Germany. So I hope they can continue some of that into this season. And Heidenheim, we saw last season, they weren't afraid once they went up to the Bundesliga, and it paid off for them. So hopefully we will see something similar from St. Pauli this season. Obviously, it's an interesting match to start off the season with, especially with Heidenheim kind of half focused on Europe at the moment because they're in Conference League playoff action either side of this game. So they might have to rotate some of their players. They might have to try and keep fit. They might have to figure out which is the best competition to attack, because getting into the Conference League group stage for them would be huge. So whereas a defeat maybe on the opening weekend or a draw against St. Pauli on the opening weekend isn't going to be the end of the world and mightn't necessarily shape their season. So I think it will be an interesting one, this one, because of that fact that Heidenheim are in another competition at the same time. And Heidenheim, the only positive I think maybe is that they were so convincing in the cup. Maxi Breinig scored a hat-trick. He's a new rival from Freiburg, so he should help score the goals because they have lost some key players. Nicholas Best, Tim Kleindienst, both gone. Nicholas Best was sold for 10 million to Benfica. That's money that Heidenheim have probably never had before in their history. He was a crucial player for them, and he could be a big loss for them. Same with Kleindienst, he was so influential. He's gone to Gladbach. They could kind of find this season a bit harder, especially if they do qualify for the Conference League and have those extra games. They will find things a lot harder, but St. Pauli, obviously, they have to make the step up from the second division to the top tier. They've brought in a Welsh international, they brought in Scottish players, so there's some kind of UK interest in this one. I like the look of Wales international Finn Stevens. He's the Welsh player. He's going to come in and play right wing back. Comes from Brentford. I think he could be an exciting attacking player for them, and he could make a difference. Heidenheim, they haven't really brought in too many players, but one of the new signings has caught my eye just because of his name, Sir Lord Conte from Paderborn. Having a name like Sir Lord, you better live up to the hype. I think it's going to be an interesting one because he's worked his way up the divisions in Germany. He started off in the Regionalliga 10 years ago with Sassel, and now playing in the Bundesliga. So it's a very interesting kind of development and career for him. Paul Vanner comes in on loan from Bayern Munich. He should be interesting enough, but I think they'll need to make a few more signings before the window closes, and maybe this week, these next couple of weeks with the Conference League and with the start of the season and the transfer window are going to be very busy ones for Heidenheim to see what happens. These teams, unlike the Hoffenheim Kiel game that we said earlier, these teams actually played a lot of times recently because Heidenheim were in the second division themselves, so they were regular opponents in the last few years. Pauli have 5 wins to Heidenheim's 3 draws in the last 7 years. So I think Pauli can kind of maybe start the season off positively here. The most common result is 1-0 when Pauli are at home in Hamburg. The most common result overall is also 1-0. A correct score 1-0 here is 8.5. Saying Pauli win could be a good option, but I don't think there's going to be high scoring one game, especially because Pauli are getting used to the division. Heidenheim are playing in the Conference League. I think this is going to be low scoring games. Going to go for under 2.5 goals in this one.
All right, Heidenheim playing in Sweden, by the way, against Haken in Gothenburg. In the Conference League, the Bundesliga 2 has started 2 games, and Hamburg had 4 points. Armin is asking you if you believe this could be the season of Hamburg going back to the Bundesliga. We have great teams, by the way, in the Bundesliga 2. Of course, we have 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐴, we have Schalke, or Cologne, Hertha. We have a great Bundesliga 2.
Yeah, the Bundesliga 2 is one of the most exciting leagues in Europe, and I think the average attendance for last season was more than both Serie A and Ligue 1. So it is a huge division and has huge teams like Hamburg, but I think, unfortunately, Hamburg are probably going to do the Hamburg again and maybe finish third. Yeah, it's probably going to be a relegation playoff for them again this season.
Let's see. Right now, Paderborn is the only team with 2 wins. 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐴, you have a fan of your Twitter account, Ronan. 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐴, Ronan's Twitter is quite entertaining. Well, if you want to...
He obviously enjoyed me winding up Chelsea fans over the weekend.
Well, by the way, if you want to get entertained as well, we have our tipster competitions going on. We had the Euro one, the Copa America, and you can participate in our monthly or yearly competition. Feel free, of course, to join Oddspedia website, absolutely for free, and you can participate and win some money. Ronan, let's finish the first video of the season with your safe bet.
My safe bet this week is RB Leipzig to win.
Almost 1.3. And the ACCA?
My ACCA is triple on 3 teams to win. So Leverkusen to win, Leipzig to win, and Mainz to win. That's 4.39.
Good one to start the new season. Great games. I believe this year the Bundesliga is going to be very entertaining. We had German teams succeeding in Europe last season, so the level is really high. Let's keep watching the Bundesliga, listening to Ronan's tips. Thanks everyone for watching. Ronan, thank you. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.